Okay, beautiful souls, we are in for a real treat today. It's going to be so much fun. We've got Dr. Elia in the house, also known as America's Happiness Doctor. He is the author of the #1 best-selling book, 7 Paths to Lasting Happiness, which, by the way, has been translated into 5 different languages already. And he also co-authored the highly acclaimed book, 7 Keys to Navigating a Crisis. He's the host of the very popular TV show, The Happy Hour with Dr. Elia. So, Dr. Elia, thank you so much for being in the house. This is going to be so much fun to dig in with you.
It's my pleasure. I've been waiting for this all week.
I
So
know,
all
same.
month, all year. Let's go.
Yes, let's go. I know people are so excited to tune into your perspective on happiness. And I'm so curious, have you always been this happy, or is this something you had to start to cultivate within yourself? Because I sense when I'm with you, I'm like, he's so happy. It's so grounded. It's so embodied. Have you always been like that, or did you have to start to cultivate it?
Actually, I have been. The funny thing about the happiness thing, it started the day I was born. I know that sounds like a stretch, like that's got to be a hyperbole or something.
Yeah.
So I was born a long time ago in Athens, Greece. Back in the day, where the only people that were allowed in the birthing room was basically my mother and the physician. There was
Mhm.
no Instagram Live or Facebook Live, or there was no camp. There was nothing, right?
I mean, thank God, though.
Yeah,
That's
I mean that's how
funny.
it was back then. So as the story was told with me growing up, and this has to do with personal branding. This is really powerful. My dad, kind of a tough Greek guy, drink, smoke, comes
Mhm.
up to this little window. There are like 4 or 5 little babies. They're all wrapped up in the same white generic, blankets back in the day. And he asked the nurse, "Which one's my son?" And I
Yeah.
guess at that point, I had a smile on my face. So the nurse turns to my dad. He goes, "Your son, he's the happy one."
Aw, I
So
just
now
got
listen to
body
this. So
chills.
I grew up in a family, and I was told like, well, you came out of the womb happy. You've always been, happy, easy go like, and so on, which is a great brand, by the way. I'm
Yeah, right?
branded. I feel like the nurse branded me right there and then.
For sure.
Now, and here's the lesson. Fast forward to 25 years later, and I'm in graduate school getting my PhD in clinical psychology, and our professor is teaching us about nature versus nurture.
Mm,
In other words, what makes us who we are? Is it our generic predisposition,
mm,
or is it the environment and how we grew up in? Well, the truth is, both have impact. But I had this strange thought, and I kid you not, I remember like it was today. I'm like, wait a minute. What if my dad gets stuck in traffic? He shows up like 15 minutes late
mhm.
and comes up the same little window, asks the same nurse the same question. And at that point, I have gas pains or whatever, and I'm screaming my head
Mhm.
off. My face is all red.
Yeah.
The nurse turns to my dad and goes, "Your son, he's the cranky one."
Yeah, yeah. Right? Yeah.
And then I'm raised in a family that says, "Well, you came out of the womb cranky, you miserable little beep." Now why do I share it? And I've shared this globally. I've shared this for years across the globe. This is the reason why. Because if you think about it, we've all been branded early on in our lives in one way or another. Now, obviously, the happy one is one of the greatest brands ever. And there are
Yeah.
other ones. The princess, the beautiful one, the artistic one, the athletic one, the kind one, the sweet one, the loving one, and so on, right? These are all great brands. And if you've been branded one of those, count your blessings because that's wonderful.
Mhm.
The reality, however, is that most people have not been branded with positive brands. And this
Mhm.
comes from my experience as a clinical psychologist in private practice for 18 years, seeing
Mhm.
thousands of people, and then as an executive coach and so on.
Mhm.
I can tell you the 3 most common brands,
Mm.
oftentimes towards women or towards girls, I should say, because the majority of my clients, at least 70%, I would say, have been women over the years.
Mhm.
And you might say, well, Elia, there's no way somebody would say those things to a little girl or a young boy. I beg to differ. And here are the 3 worst: the ugly one, the stupid one, and the fat one.
Mm.
Now these are terrible brands. Imagine growing up, and then the inner critic begins to validate that.
Mm.
So about 10, 15 years ago, I'm sharing this at a women's conference. There are 500 women in me in the United States. And the call to action, of course, it was what? First of all, be clear about what your brand was. If it was positive, great. If it was a negative brand, now you stand in choice as an adult, and you
Mm.
can reject that brand that you had inherited in essence because it wasn't yours, and then you can choose a different brand. And that was the call to action. So out of the corner of my eye, this lady gets up and starts waving her arms, and she's got gray hair. She's like in her same elderly lady, and she's throwing me off my, I'm in my game, like I'm doing my thing, but I can't ignore her because she's going like this.
Yeah.
And the people now in the audience are looking at me. They're looking at her. It's kind of awkward. And so
Yeah.
I stopped, and I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." And her name was Leah, by the way, first name.
Yeah.
She goes, after listening to you for 7 decades, I've had that. But in her case, she had all three of them. She was
Mhm.
called fat, ugly, and stupid, and a couple of F-bombs to go with it. So she
Mm.
shares this in front of the entire group. Now you
Mm.
can hear a pin drop by now.
Yeah.
It was very tense. awkward. Honestly, Christina, I don't know if I would have the courage to share what you shared in front of 500 strangers. I mean, she
Mm.
took a lot of courage for her to stand up and say that.
Mhm.
So at some point, people are looking to see how I'm going to handle this. And at some point, I'm like, well, ma'am, what would you like your new brand to be? And she goes, well, from now on, and she stood up like, just like
Yeah.
somebody
Taller.
goes, I want to be known as Princess Leia, kind of like Princess Leia from Star Wars. At which point, no, 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 this is what, at which point I'm like, yes, Your Majesty. And I bowed down, and everybody
Yes.
cracked up, and a very tense moment became a very, lighthearted moment. And I finished my talk and so on. And what was so beautiful afterwards, all these other women went up to her and gave her hugs, and they talked, and
Ah.
it was this beautiful moment. Why do I share this story? Because in my book, if a woman in her 70s has the courage and the capability and the will to change her brands, then you can too if you don't like your brand.
Mm.
That's why. So that's a long answer to your question, but my happiness, and my wife, we've been married for 33 years. Yes, for the most part, in spite of tragedies, in spite of difficulties that I faced in life, just like everybody else, I claim that we're all graduates from the University of Adversity, all of
Mm.
us. And
So
the
true.
older you get, the higher the degree, because you've experienced more life.
True.
Um,
So true.
that
Wow.
you too can change your brand. If you've had a positive brand, good for you. That's awesome. Enjoy
Mhm.
it, lean into it, embrace it, and be thankful and grateful for it. But if you don't, do not waste one more day because you inherited somebody else's brand, somebody else's projection.
Mm.
Not true. So now you stand in choice and you can choose something different. Because our brand determines our happiness to a large degree, I believe. How we see ourselves, right?
Absolutely. I got full body chills when you were talking about Leah and how she had the courage to stand up and how you open that space up for her to be able to be witnessed in that, because I think sometimes we just need to be witnessed in the old story for it to start to release. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
I'm just so grateful that you were like, I'm stopping my flow to say like, yes, like how can I support you? And then now you're bowing and it's just like, what a beautiful moment that everyone in that room will never forget, especially her. And I just think it's so powerful that you're talking about like shifting the branding, the personal branding. Like, what are we going by? And like, sometimes I know that if you're tuning in, sometimes we can think, well, that's easy to say, but how do we do it? And so some of the things that I know that I've done for myself and that I've supported clients with, and I know that you've done something similar too in the way that you do it, but we have to go back in and rewrite some of those stories. Like if it's not a quick, easy shift, sometimes it takes a little bit more to go in. I've
Of
had to go
course.
back and reparent my inner child of those moments in time where I was told certain things that weren't supportive for me. I would freeze the scene, go back in and say like, what did little Christina need to hear in that moment? So there are ways that we can start to actually shift it within the mind that make it easier for us to really grab hold of this new branding. So just know that if you're tuning in and you're like, that sounds nice, I wish I could, you absolutely can. Sometimes we just have to dig a little bit deeper. You know what I mean?
And it's okay to ask for help, to have somebody coach you and help you through it. I
Exactly.
want to say one last thing about Princess Leia.
Yes, please.
She didn't inspire or bless 500 women. She has inspired and blessed hundreds of thousands of people across the globe because I've shared her story.
Mm.
Her influence and her impact, what happened in that moment, and that moment really took 2 minutes. It's not like what I just described. She got up, she said her thing, I did my thing, and then we moved on. Because, so, I don't know if she's still alive. I love it like 20 years, 15, 20 years. She might be in her 90s now or whatever, if she's still, but she has blessed so many people's lives.
So
And that
true.
took courage to do what she did. Like
So much.
honestly, I don't know if I could have done it. I don't know if I would have stood up and said something like that. I'm not sure. I doubt it
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, I think she probably got a tap from, the heavens, like if this is your time, let's go. But to your point, I don't know that I would have done that either. She was powerful
A
and
remarkable lady.
through. Yeah.
Remarkable lady. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, so good. So for someone that's tuning in, I know that if they're tuning into your episode specifically, they're going to want to know, like, how do they start to cultivate more happiness? The rebranding, absolutely.
Right.
Take a look at the old stories and how can you start to shift those? What else could someone do to start to bring in more happiness into their life?
Well, the lowest hanging fruit, obviously, is gratitude. That's the
Yes.
lowest hanging fruit because we know that you cannot be in a grateful state and be depressed at the same time physiologically. Because when we are in a grateful state, the greatest drug dealer in the world is activated. It starts
Yes, the
releasing
brain.
the brain. It starts releasing those amazing chemicals that stay into your system. So you can't be depressed and grateful at the same time. Now, having said that, and we all hear this beautiful catchy phrase, have an attitude of gratitude. It's catchy, it's cute, and it's easy when things are going well in life.
Yeah.
And like I shared before, given that we're all graduates from the University of Adversity, here's the key question. Can we be grateful in the midst of adversity?
Mm,
Because that's a different question. When things are going well, that's the easiest thing in the world. And I learned that lesson from one of my role models, which is Nelson Mandela, a
mm,
remarkable human being who, after being in prison for close to 30 years, came
mhm,
out, became president of his country, and had every right to punish, to imprison his adversaries and all people that did all these horrible things to him. And instead, he forgave them. And he
mm,
did it with love and unified a country. One of the things that Nelson Mandela said that is so profound, he said, in life, either you win or you learn,
mm,
meaning that there's no losing.
right.
So when it comes to adversity and gratitude, you and I have accomplished some good things in our lives, like everybody else has. But isn't it true that the greatest lessons we have learned have never come from our successes,
Correct.
have
Mhm.
come from what at the time seemed to be human frailties, weaknesses, setbacks, obstacles,
Yes.
right? And it's in those moments that, and I heard something, there was a conference you and I were together earlier this year that said rejection is God's protection, or
Mm,
rejection is protection. And when
mhm,
you think about that, when one door has closed and it's painful, I'm not saying it's not painful when it happens. When you get rejected, you lose a job or your relationship breaks up and so on. Of course, it's difficult or it's painful. We're human beings. But when you fast forward and you look back and say, you know what? I know exactly why that happened to me. I wouldn't be
mm,
the person I am today had that not happened to me. And
yes.
for that, I am grateful. So now, can we be grateful in the midst of adversity, not wait several months or several years, then to look back and say, oh, I know why that happened as we're
Mhm,
going through it. And the older I get, the more I'm like, I had a rough day a couple of days ago. There were like two or three things happened beyond my control that, like, and I'm like,
mhm,
Elia, you're good at preaching all this stuff to everybody else. You're
mm,
in it right now. How will you
mhm.
show up today, even though you're getting like bombarded by, these things that are happening? You're getting constant, but they're still having an impact on you and your family. And I'm here to tell you, Christina, I handled like a superstar. Like all day long, I didn't panic. I didn't go into fear mode. I
Mhm,
got quiet. I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? How am I going to show up? Because this too shall pass.
mhm,
And this is one of the things that happy people have in common is that they have I call it a big picture perspective,
mm,
meaning that no matter what happens, is this too shall pass.
yes.
So the camera pulls back way, way back. And a couple of days ago, I did that. I'm like, tomorrow's a new day. Yeah, today's kind of a crappy day. It's like, what the heck? And it did pass. And the next
Mhm,
day I got up and I'm like, man, I feel so much better. And I'm really proud of the fact that yesterday I didn't go into panic mode, fear mode, and so on.
mm,
Like I showed up because I'm like, what am I supposed to learn? I'm in the midst of adversity right now. This is not hypothetical, and you're not giving some talk or some podcast. You're living it. How will
yes.
you show up?
Yes.
No,
Yes. The triggers are the guides. They're guiding us into a new way of doing life. And I love what you were saying. So, that rejection is God's protection, it's God's redirection. It's like,
or
it's
redirection, even
really,
that beautiful
yeah, it's
redirection.
just landing us back into, you know, uh, one, the present moment, because often if we're in that fear, we're in the past or the future, right? Landing us back into the present moment of being like, what is this teaching me? Like, let me zoom out. I love what you were saying, where you're like, let me see the bigger picture. Like, what is this actually teaching me? How can I find the gratitude within this moment? Because often, it can take us till we understand it to say, like, oh, there's the gratitude. But if we can start to find the gratitude now, it does start to allow us to then find the creative solutions faster, lean into and just kind of open us up to receive something that's even more in alignment. So I just love everything you're saying. And it's so, tangible, tactical, and really powerful. It seems so simple, but sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful. We just love to overcomplicate things in the mind, right?
Well, the funny thing is that common sense is often not common practice.
Oh my gosh. There we go. Mic
But,
drop.
but it was true. Like, don't we all know what the right thing to do is, like, for the most
Yes.
part? I mean, we do. Come on now.
Yes. So
Yes.
true.
I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about it, New Year's resolutions, globally, billions of people have the same two resolutions every single year. I want to lose some weight. I want to get in shape. And they say that every single year. So clearly we know what to do, and yet we don't do it. Or else it
Right.
would come up year after year after year, right?
Right.
So a couple of other things that happy people have in common, I think. First of all, they practice massive self-care.
Hmm.
That's at the top, by the way. So the
Yeah.
way they take care of themselves physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually for me personally, it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And I say this having suffered burnout 20 years ago as a psychologist, and that almost killed me, literally took me out of this. I was this close to exiting this mortal life
Mm.
because I was neglecting the signs. I was taking shortcuts in self-care. I was pretending I was taking care of myself, but really I wasn't. And finally, it caught up with me after 18 years of seeing thousands of people. But I
Mm.
learned a valuable lesson. And at that moment, I said, never again. This will
Yeah.
never happen again to me. And that
Mhm.
was 20 years ago. So chronologically, I'm 20 years older than I was then, but I'm better physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, even though I'm
Mhm.
20 years older.
Mhm.
And that's because my self-care is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. So for someone who's tuning in that might be on the grind and not knowing it, what are signs of burnout? And I'd love to know how you kind of started to get yourself to that other side of like implementing self-care and what that looks like for you.
Well, this is not a pretty picture, but I have to say that
Yes.
this was not my finest moment, Christina.
We have many of those, so
I'm
let's
so-
go. We're all human.
So, I had a full private practice. When I retired, I realized that most psychologists last 10 years before they get burned out. And if they see 20 to 25 patient hours per week, that's considered full time.
Yeah.
I did it for 18 years, and I used to see 45 patient hours per week. My
Oh
wife was
my
like, "You're
gosh.
going to have a heart attack. You're going to kill yourself." And I was very arrogant, classic Greek in a lot of ways. I can handle it, Hercules. I can do anything.
For
No,
sure.
it's true. That's how I was.
Yeah, I
And I
get it.
also love my job, and I love helping people. And a
Yeah.
lot of times they would come in and say, "Dr. Elia, you're our last hope. We've been to
Mm.
therapists,
Yeah.
counselors. Nobody's helped us. If this doesn't work out, I'm going to kill myself," which was a lot of pressure on me, or I'm going to get
Yeah.
a divorce or whatever. So I didn't have the ability to say no, Christina, which is another mistake. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to say no. So I took
Mm.
everybody in, and I had people on a wait list. It was just so for the first 16 years, I was thriving. But then your body begins to send you messages.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So slowly, my body begins to like, I'm in pain, I'm uncomfortable, the pain is starting to like increase, the frequency increases, and so on. So after a while, and I'm a spiritual person, I got down on my knees and asked God, I'm like, why is this happening to me? I'm
Mm.
trying to be a good father, a husband, take care of people, community, so on. And the answer was crystal clear. And whatever you call that voice, whether you call it the spirit, the Holy Ghost, your intuition, your higher self, I don't care what you call that voice. For me, it speaks to me as
Mhm.
clearly as I talk to you right now.
Mhm.
But it's always short. It's not like some long dissertation. And you know what the answer was? Elia, I'm trying to take you in a different direction and you're not listening to me. End quote. That was it.
Mm. Mm.
Guess what your friend Elia did with that great advice?
Kept
I,
trucking away at what you were doing.
I ignored it
Exactly. Yeah.
because I'm an idiot. I ignored it.
No, it's just
No, it's human nature.
into the integration.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. But when I look back and I'm like, what the heck? So guess what happened when you ignore that voice? 6 months go by.
Mhm.
Now the pain and the frequency has not only increased, I'm in and out of emergency rooms. They're doing all kinds of testing on me. They can't figure out what's wrong with me. But my pain was not psychosomatic, it was real.
Yeah.
Now it's interfering with my life, like really interfering with my life. So now 6 months have gone by, misery, back on my knees again. God, why is this happening to me? Now it's a little bit more. The answer was crystal clear again. Eli, I told you before, I'm trying to take you in a different direction. You're not listening to me. And then he said, I want you to spread the light to a lot more people, meaning
Mhm.
that doing one-on-one work.
Yeah.
Which I thought is an interesting answer. But my mind is like, okay, well, that sounds great. How do I make money doing that? Because I still
Mhm.
have a family to support. That's how my
Yeah.
mind works.
Yeah.
Because there was
Provider.
some kind of hesitation, there was one final sentence which changed my life. And if you don't, I'm going to call you home by the time you're 50. And I was in my early 40s. And my mom, 50 was a symbolic number because my mother died from cancer when she was 51.
Mm.
So for me, 50 wasn't like some like, well, that's ridiculous. Nobody dies at 50. Like, what? And then I decided to go upstairs, tell my wife, I said, honey, I think I need to end this. It was painful. I thought I was going to be a psychologist for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And it took me 9 months to shut down my practice because I had a huge practice. It's not easy to
Yeah.
shut it down. You can't shut it
Right.
down the next day.
Right.
I started stop no more new referrals. I started telling people. People were like freaking out. I'm like, let me try to get as many people as I have in practice right now well, so they can move on and so on. But unfortunately, my body was so ravaged by whatever was happening to me that like a month and a half before I retired, I hit the wall.
Yeah.
And hitting the wall meant that I was working was doing marriage counseling with a couple, and I must have been so miserable. And I was looking at the clock. I was in so much pain. I'm like, okay, 20 more minutes, 15 more minutes. The couple said, Elia, doc, or doctor, you don't look very well. We're going to go now. You should take care of yourself. And I was like, no, I can handle it. No, but I must have looked so bad.
Mhm.
They left before the session ended, which has never
Mhm.
happened before to me. I mean, I've worked through kidney
Yeah.
stones. I've worked through all kinds of stuff. I'm like,
Wow.
work.
Yeah.
I threw up from pain. And
Oof.
my wife heard me. I used to work out of the home. She came down. She goes, "Honey, you don't look good. I got it. We got to go to the urgent care." And
Yeah.
my classic Greek male,
Yeah.
typically would have said, "No, no, honey, I'll be okay. Just give me some time." But I'm telling you, the voice, the spirit said to me, "Elia, you need to go, and you need to go right now."
Yeah.
So I go there. They do a kind of testing. They're like, "We can't help you here. You got to go to the ER right now." So my wife takes me there. Anyway, long story short, 6 days in the hospital, two surgeries,
Oof.
emergency. I know, and the worst 6 days of my life, but the most impactful 6 days of my life because when you're in the hospital, you got tubes coming in and out, and it's late at night, and the nurses coming to check in on you, and all your friends, family has left. You have a lot of time to think, a lot
Yeah.
of time to think.
Mm.
And I'm like, man, this feels so bad. So before I was released from the hospital, I had one last visit with my surgeon I had complications. It wasn't easy. He goes, it's a good thing you came in because had you waited one or more 2 days, your liver was shutting down. You would have been gone just like
Mhm.
that. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I said, why did this happen to me? He goes, well, two reasons, either excessive drinking or excessive stress. And I didn't even drink that, then. So
Yeah.
so I'm like, I was stressful, but I was not paying attention. The
Right.
signs were there. Your body's trying to talk to you. Your body's
Mhm.
not your enemy. He was like
Mhm.
clobbering with a 2x4. Listen to me. What? Listen to me. And I was
Yeah.
ignoring it. So after that, I made a vow to myself, never again. I will never get burned out again. I will
Mhm.
never get sick again like this. This will never happen to me again. And I'm going to start practicing self-care. And that changed the whole trajectory of my life. Like I said,
Mm.
I'm 20 years older. I'm better than ever. Living
Wow.
proof. So my
Yes.
self-care is non-negotiable, period.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Absolutely. Yeah. What you're saying resonates so deeply. Like if you're a human tuning in, which everyone is, you've experienced that where you push through the intuitive hit. You know what I mean? Like it's human nature. We're like, maybe that's real. Maybe it's not. I'm going to keep going because this is what's quote unquote familiar. So we keep going. And one of my mentors has always said, the intuition is a whisper when it starts and then it gets louder and louder. And then it's the brick across the face, which that was the brick across the face moment, the 2x4, like you just mentioned, where it was like, 2 more days and you'd be with me on the other side, and it's like so interesting, that was what the booming voice was saying. And how that did become one of the greatest catalysts of your life here. And now it's totally transformed your life, your business. So to those, entrepreneurs that are tuning in, I mean, this is just such an invitation to listen to the intuitive voice, really listen to that voice. It's telling you this for a reason. Allow yourself to follow it now. Don't wait for that brick across the face moment. Allow yourself to really honor what you're receiving because it's true. The body is telling the story of the soul. It's trying to redirect you, right? And it's asking you to listen. And we can't ignore the body. It's loud, it's painful, it's this, it's that. And so, if you're ever trying to figure out what is my body trying to tell me, Louise Hay, Heal Your Body from A to Z is a really powerful resource. It's a
One of the
good
best
way.
books I've ever read over and over and over again. I love that
Yes.
was back like over 30, 40 years I read that book. That's one of
Yes.
my favorite books of all time, top 10
Yes.
books.
Yes.
So
Agree.
good.
And I guarantee it's because, all the things that you went through as well. I'm sure it drew you into that book. Like, what is my body telling me? So, so powerful. I love that book.
And don't do what I did. And of
Yes.
course, if you lose your liver, you're pretty much done. I mean, there's not a whole lot. There's not coming back from that. So for me, it was very powerful, scary, but
Mhm.
so good. I'm so grateful for it. I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
go through it again. Like,
Yeah, of course.
obviously.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Powerful. Yeah.
yeah.
What does your self-care look like for someone who might be like, okay, I'm definitely that person. I've been getting the intuitive whispers. What are some ideas? Like, what do you do?
Well, I've been taking, manifesting a great life
Mhm.
where you integrate your work in with play and
Mhm.
family and relationships. You and I have, your maiden name and my mom's maiden name is the same, Papas. So
Yeah.
we could even be related. We could distant
Yeah.
cousins.
I love it.
So, I manifested this life where with now our kids are raised and we're having grandkids and so on. So we're in the US 8 months out of the year. We're in Greece/Europe 4 months out of the year.
Mm.
And that was a dream come true. Every Greek dreams to go back to Greece at some point. And I've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years post pandemic.
Mm.
So having a life that you truly enjoy, that you look forward to. I know people say that and you're like, they got to be full of crap. Like, is that really true? I'm like, I'm telling you, I look forward to something every single day.
Mm. So
And
true.
one of the gifts of losing someone like my mom, who was an angel, my mom wasn't just loved by people, she was beloved by men and women because she was all about love.
So true.
Her parting comment to me once, and it was very like losing her was like beyond devastating. Because I was only 22 years old, I had just graduated from UCLA. But her
Mm.
parting comments to me on her deathbed were this: "My boy, this is in Greek. She said, my boy, don't worry about me. I'm going to be just fine. I just want you to be happy." And then she died. She went into a coma, and then within 48 hours, she passed away.
Mm.
The greatest gift ever. And it was in alignment with me being the happy. Even though I was in the biggest pain of my life, I remember the first year after she passed away, not that I wanted to kill myself, but I was like, God, if I can get hit by a bus today, I'm okay with it because I just want to be with my mom. Mom,
Yeah, I know. Resonates. Yeah.
I didn't want to get out of bed.
Hmm.
I forced myself to get out of bed. It was, I mean, and I experienced depression, grief, and so on. But
Hmm.
something magical happened on the 1 year anniversary of her passing. And anniversaries are hard, especially the first year anniversary of everything like that. First Christmas, first birthday, first all that stuff. In my mind, her words came back to me. And I looked in the mirror and said, Elia, the best way to honor your mama is by being happy. And it's almost like some neural pathway happened right there and then in my brain. And I shifted gears. And then I started looking at life from a different perspective.
Mm.
And it was such a gift. And I've been doing that. I just not celebrated her 40th heavenly birthday. My mom's
Wow.
been gone for 40 years. I was with her for 22 of those. She's been gone twice as long as I had her on this earth.
Wow.
And she's so close to me. I'm a lot like her.
Hmm.
Like I would say the best attributes that I have comes from my mama, big
Hmm.
time.
Mm.
Love, I love big hearts, happy, go, just like, yeah, just she's alive through me in a lot of ways.
Hmm. And what a tribute to her, the way that you're living your life, and that being, the final word she said to you on earth. And I know you're connected with her in the spiritual realm, but, for her to have shared that with you, to say, just be happy, like follow that
Oh,
path. And for you to now be America's happiness doctor, I mean, talk about, you being in not only soul alignment with your truth, but also what a gift for her to be looking down and witnessing that you're impacting thousands and thousands of people's lives every day, and you'll never know the ripple effect of everything that you're doing. It's just so powerful.
I think we might know that on the other side. I have a belief that when we get to the other side, we'll find out
Oh, for sure.
what the
Yeah.
ripple effect is
Oh,
somehow.
yes. How
I believe that.
beautiful. Mm.
Yeah, to me, when
Gift.
we talk about heaven or hell, I mean, I don't believe in heaven or hell in the way
Mhm.
that but to me, heaven is
Mhm.
finding out on the other side the impact you've had on people's lives for the positive. All
Powerful.
of it. It could be like I said, who knows? And hell, quote unquote, is finding out when you were unkind to people what the impact of that was.
Mm.
When you were cruel to that person, let me show you what happened as a result of that, what you said to them or what you did to them.
Mm. Mm. And so
Because
just
because that's the completion of your whole life, right? So
yeah.
to me, every action, every word that comes out of my mouth, I'm very mindful of that. The big picture again, it's like how I treat the lady at the counter.
Hmm. Yes,
A
absolutely.
smile, call them by their name. They have a tight here. Hi, Mary. Nice sweater, whatever. Like every time we have a contact with another human being, we have
Yes.
the ability to impact it one or two ways, up or
Yes.
down.
Yeah. I
And I'm very
completely.
mindfully, consciously of that every single day, every interaction I have,
Mhm.
starting from my immediate family. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying that, but I'm mindful of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
watch what comes out of your mouth. Watch how you treat other people. And in the end, and this is like you'll relate to this. The first lesson I've learned in life, the first lesson. My mom's was the second most powerful. Her words when she was dying. But when I was 5 years old, this is in Greece before we moved to the United States. My grandpa Elia, whose name I carry and I honor, gave me this incredible gift. And he died when I was 6. So I don't remember, my papu Elia very much.
Mhm.
But when I was 5 years old, he sat me in his lap and he was this wonderful, sweet man. And again, this is in Greek, I'm translating, but he says, my boy, do you want to know a secret? And I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, grandpa. He goes, do you want to be the richest man in the world? And at which point I got Bugs Bunny ears. I'm like, ding. I'm like, yes,
For sure.
grandpa. Yeah. He goes, if you want to be the richest man in the world, do something good for somebody else every day, and you, my boy, will be the richest man in the world.
Mm.
At the time, of course, I thought what I thought he meant was like Pirates of the Caribbean, like gold and silver. I mean, no, so you're a 5 year old
Yeah.
little kid.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, that's
Uh-huh.
your idea of richness.
Of course.
But when I
Yeah.
got older, I realized how profound this statement was. Do
Mm.
something good for somebody else every day, and you'll be the richest person in the world. And I have
Absolutely.
tried to live my life that way. And I'm
Mhm.
thankful to my grandpa, and I'm thankful to my mom, to people that I adore, I love, and I can't wait to see them on the other side when the time comes.
Mm. So good. The
Gifts,
wisdom.
tremendous
Yes.
gifts. Simple in
100%.
some ways. Simple, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's meant to be simple. Like you were saying, it really is. It's meant to be simple. We like to overcomplicate it. Or the brain is looking for a problem to solve. So sometimes it creates the problem. What a gift. Just the wisdom in both of those simplistic statements, like the wisdom. And it's so true. It's like a way of being. You know what I mean? It really is just a way of being. And so, so powerful.
And
Thank you so
happiness
much.
and kindness are interrelated. They're connected,
Yeah,
right? Happy
absolutely.
people because their own batteries are full, because they have practiced
Mhm.
self-care, because they do have a attitude of gratitude and so on. They do acts of kindness all the time, and they're not random. They're
Mhm.
conscious, mindful, deliberate acts of kindness. On the flip
Yes.
side, when we do perform acts of kindness, guess what? The drug dealer again starts releasing all these chemicals because it
Yes.
feels
Yeah.
good. I mean, Harvard,
Yes.
there are studies that have been done to support all that
Yes.
physiologically. So to me, with kindness, everybody wins. Everybody
Yeah.
wins with kindness.
Absolutely. And I think the what's really powerful about that too is I always think like if someone's just being deliberately mean or kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, mean, judgmental, jealous, whatever it is, I always think I'm like, ah, it must be so exhausting to be in your mind because if this is what you're projecting, all of that's happening on the inside. And I just send them light and love. Like I just, without even saying anything, I'm just like, it's so clear to me that they need light and love. I'm just going to send it their way and just keep going. And so I think sometimes so many of us, and myself included, for a very long time, would just meet them in that, like, oh, they're angry at me. So now I feel bad and guilt and all this stuff. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm not meant to meet them in that. I'm meant to just send them light and love and then continue to send everyone else light and love because that's who I am and that's who I drop into intentionally, and then I notice when I oscillate because I'm human and we're all human and we
Sure.
oscillate and we go back and forth. But that is something that I just wanted to breathe into the space as well for those that are, surrounded by people that might be in a lower vibrational state. Just imagine what it's like in their mind's eye, every single day, how exhausting. Send them light and love. Don't meet them there. Keep moving, keep that kindness up.
Although I do want to say something about toxic relationships since you brought it up.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Um, so if you practice all the self-care in the world
Hmm.
and you're in the state of gratitude,
Hmm.
self-forgiveness, which is another thing we haven't talked about. Self-forgiveness is huge. Happy people have
Yes.
forgiven themselves completely.
Yes.
You
So
practice
true.
kindness. You know your purpose and you live your life in alignment with your purpose. These are all, so part of the 7 paths of lasting happiness. But let's say you do all that stuff, for the most part, pretty well. But you surround yourself with toxic people, it's going to rob you
Absolutely.
from your
Yeah.
health and happiness. And I stand here to tell you that I have no toxic people in my life and haven't had for a long time. And people said, are you serious? Are you kidding? I'm like, what if it's a member of your family? And I'm like, of course it's a member of your family, at least one or two. Yes, hello.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So then they're like, well, how did you do it? I said, it's very simple. It starts with how we show up in relationships.
Uh-huh. Yes.
First, it's the person in the mirror. So Christina, in my relationship with you, let's use you and I
Mhm.
as an example.
Mhm.
i- do I show up with love, kindness, and respect towards you for the most part?
Always. Yeah.
Okay. So if the answer is always, or for the most part, then I have every right to say, I need you to also treat me with love, kindness, and respect in return.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that
Mm-hmm.
fair, by the way?
100%. I've had to
I
do
think
this
it's
in my
fair
own
100%.
relationships. Yes.
And when you have, this is what I call hot communication, HOT, which stands for honest, open, and transparent. It takes some
Mm.
courage to do that the first time. It's
Yeah.
not easy. I remember the first time I did it, my heart was like da 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 da, because it's a
Yes.
member of the family.
Yeah.
But when that happened, this person turned to me. He got quiet and turned to me and said, "Are you saying I'm the only toxic person in your life?" I'm like, "Yes." No, no, but it was
Yeah.
true. And you know
Uh-huh.
what he said? He said, "Well, I don't want to be the only toxic person in your life." I said, "I don't want that either.
Yeah.
I want a relationship to be loving, kind, and respectful mutually."
Yeah. Yes.
So when you raise the bar,
Yes.
people have two choices. Either they begin to treat you the way that you deserve to be treated, which is with love, kindness, and respect, or
Uh-huh.
otherwise there's going to be a huge timeout. And the
Uh-huh.
timeout for me is like, okay, if it's a member of the family, for example, because if it's a stranger, it's easy to cut them off. It's like you're out.
Mm-hmm.
Member of the family, it's like, okay, well then we're going to have a very superficial relationship. Which I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to text you happy birthday and Merry Christmas, once in a while, how's the weather and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to have a deeper relationship with you. But the parameters, the boundaries, maybe a better word, is that this relationship, if you want to go deeper, has to be mutually loving, kind, and respectful. Are you
Mm-hmm.
in or are you out? Most people
Yes.
step up, believe it or not,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody has actually held them accountable that way. But you
Mm-hmm.
got to mean it. If they start going back to old ways, I'm like, okay, so and so, I'm going to keep my distance for you for 6 months, and then we'll revisit. What?
Yes.
Like I told you
Yes.
once, I told you twice. That's it.
Yes.
People step up, and
They
for those
do.
that don't, well, good riddance then. That's
Yes.
easy.
Right. Yeah. Gosh, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I'm so glad because that is it's a twofold where it's like if it's just someone that you're like, you can just send love and light to, but if it's someone the boundaries, that's a really, really powerful and really important. I've had to do that in so many of my relationships too, as I was starting to step into more love, more light, more purpose. Uh, that really upset people that weren't doing that, and so
It
I
does.
had to,
I
yeah,
agree.
I had to create boundaries around it where it was like, a lot of projections coming my way. And I just had to say, I'm not available for you to be mean to whenever you want to. If you want to be respectful and you want to be loving, let's revisit this, but I'm not available for this anymore. And so we didn't talk for 3 months. And then we came
Exactly.
back and then we had a conversation and it was totally different, but it was needed to say, I will not be available for you if this is the way that you're showing up. Because I've got things that I'm doing, lives that I'm changing, my own included, my families, the people that I'm connected with, my clients, my friends, all of it. And it's so true. Those people in your life that are close proximity, we just have to really connect into, are they showing up in the way that we're showing up for them as well? And if not, it's time to make some shifts and some
And
invitations.
but yeah, and thank you for that. And by the way, this isn't just for family members. I do a lot of executive coaching. I work
Yeah.
with
Oh, yeah.
entrepreneurs and business owners and C-suite and so on. This is also true for in the professional sphere.
Yes. Yes. So true. I'm
Because
so
you,
glad you
you hear,
said
oh,
that.
there's such a toxic environment. It's like, okay, well, first of all, how are you showing up as a leader? Let's
Yeah.
start with you
Yes.
first before we talk about everybody else. So
Absolutely.
now, once I get through the coaching, get them to show up with love, kindness, and respect towards their colleagues, their direct reports, and so on, or even their partners. A lot of times it's a partnership thing. Then I say, you got to do that first before I even talk about anybody else in your group. We start with
Mhm.
you first. When you get to that point, then we can have a conversation with and bring everybody up. And that's when we have those hot conversations, honest,
Mhm.
open, and transparent. By the way, there's two ways to do that. One is to take a 2x4 and say, well, in the name of transparency and honesty, you're a jerk.
Nice.
That's
That's
one
one
way to do
way.
it. I wouldn't recommend it because people get
Yeah.
defensive.
Yeah, of course.
The other way to do it is the way that Christina does it, with sending love and kindness while you're having this conversation, but with
Mhm.
boundaries.
Yeah.
And when you do that, I'm telling you, most people, because I believe in the goodness of people, I think most people want to be their best selves. Sometimes they don't know how. And sometimes you and I, we need to model that behavior.
Yes. Mhm.
Hey, and when you model that behavior, for that person, it took 3 months to come back and now get it with
Mhm.
you. Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes 6 months, could take a year, however long it takes. Eventually, they're gonna come around because they know you mean business and that your
Mhm.
boundaries are pretty solid and
Mhm.
loving, not,
Yes.
not mean, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. I'm so glad you brought that up as far as like in the workplace too. And I love, thinking about the people that are tuning in. So many of them are entrepreneurs. And how can entrepreneurs start to really infuse that happiness into their day-to-day too? Is that similar to what you were saying before, or is it a little bit different around, the business aspect?
No, I think it's similar. The one thing is that please understand that there's no real work-life balance. That's an
Mm-hmm.
oxymoron.
Mm-hmm.
But there is work-life integration,
Mm-hmm.
which means that sometimes I got to lean more into my work because there's deadlines. I have something to, I have a big, and sometimes it's more play. So you lean
Mm-hmm.
more into that. And sometimes it's more family time with, spouse, kids, significant other, and so on. So it's how we integrate and how it flows.
Mm-hmm.
And happy people and even happy leaders are flexible and adaptable. That's the last thing I want to share with you.
Mm. Yes.
Flexibility and adaptability is key to success, both on the personal level and professional level.
Yes. Absolutely. I love that. That, flexibility, adaptability. I think when when we step into gratitude, it's so much easier to understand like what's the creative solution? How can I adapt here? And so I think, kind of that similar step approach that you were saying, like when we're in it, start to step into gratitude so we can neutralize maybe some of the triggers. And then we find some of those creative solutions, like you were saying, be adaptable, like you were saying, it's not going to be like 9 to 5 every day. Maybe we can shift it a little bit. Some days are a little longer. Maybe can you take a little bit less from the next one? It kind of just depends on where it nets out, but just honor your body is really, I think, one of the key things that was coming through today. Honor your body, honor your truth, and you'll start to experience more and more happiness every single day. So,
Every single day. And the other final thing is when the happiest version of you is walking around on this beautiful blue planet,
mhm.
not only do you model the behavior, but you almost give permission to those around and say, you know what? I want some of that.
Yes,
Because happiness is contagious. Happiness is healthy.
yes,
Happiness is sexy. People are
yeah,
attracted to people that are happy.
yes,
They are. Happiness is
mhm,
it's just this beautiful positive energy.
mhm.
And why is happiness important? I'm going to end with this since you and I have some Greek in us. The great Greek philosopher Aristotle said the following. He said, happiness is the whole purpose and meaning of life, the whole
Mm,
aim and end of human existence. Think about what Aristotle
yes,
said 2,500 years ago. How,
yes,
how important that is.
yeah,
And if there's any parent out there,
mhm,
because I share this, I travel the world and speak to different audiences across the globe. I
mhm,
always ask this question before I get started with my talk. If you were to ask any parent or grandparent, whatever, regardless of ethnicity, socioeconomic status, religious affiliation, gender, and all that stuff, what would you like for your children? I just want them to be. What's the answer to that?
happy. Hmm.
Universal. Everybody says
Yes,
that, right?
yes,
So if
yeah,
that's true for our kids, shouldn't it also be true for ourselves?
yes.
Okay.
Mm. So good, Dr. Elia. Thank you so much. This was absolutely incredible. I'm just like from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all the wisdom that you poured into this space. Where are you hanging out? Where can people connect with you? Because I guarantee they got a taste of your medicine. They want more.
Yes, dreliagourgouris.com is my website.
Mhm.
The happy hour is on the Mental Health Television Network, so that's mhtn.org. So,
Mhm.
and I have amazing guests.
Mm.
This young lady here is next.
Yay!
Can't look for that interview to happen. So we can
Yes,
turn the tables a
same.
little bit.
Yeah,
And then on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. You can find me on
mhm.
Instagram, whatever. I mean, that's Dr. Elia G on, Instagram. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, Dr. Elia, thank you so much. This was absolutely incredible. And to all of the listeners, I hope that you received something really beautiful, really intangible, inspiring. And so, just from our hearts to yours, thank you so much for tuning in and gifting us your most precious resource, your time. We're sending you so much light, love, and happiness. Until next time.
And remember, do not procrastinate your happiness.